Picture this, you're a hardworking Brit who drives to work every day because public transport in your area is either non-existent or about as reliable as a chocolate teapot. You've already been hammered by the cost of living crisis, your energy bills are through the roof, and you're still reeling from every other tax hike the government's thrown at you. And then Rachel Reeves rocks up with her red briefcase and decides, you know what this country needs? A lovely new 3 pence per mile tax on drivers. But before we proceed, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more updates on the UK Political Insight. Thank you. Cheers, Rachel. Really feeling the love. Welcome to UK Political Insight, where today we're breaking down the massive revolt brewing over Rachel Reeves' reported plan to absolutely clobber motorists with fuel duty hikes. 152,000 people have signed a petition telling her to back off, and a group of MPs are leading the charge. Let's get into it. Right, so here's what's allegedly coming down the pipeline in this week's budget. Rachel Reeves is reportedly eyeing up two things that have got drivers across the country absolutely fuming. First, she's looking at scrapping the temporary 5 pence per litre cut on fuel duty that Rishi Sunak introduced back in March 2022 when the Ukraine war sent fuel prices into the stratosphere. That temporary cut was a lifeline for millions of people, and now it's potentially getting axed. But wait, there's more. She's also reportedly considering introducing a 3 pence per mile tax on electric vehicles. So basically, if you drive a petrol or diesel car, you're getting walloped. And if you thought you were being environmentally responsible by going electric, well, surprise, you're getting taxed too. Everyone loses. It's like the world's worst game show. Now, fuel duty in the UK has been frozen since 2011 at 52.95 pence per litre. That's 14 years of consecutive governments recognizing that whacking up fuel duty is political suicide because it hits ordinary working people the hardest. But apparently Rachel Reeves didn't get that memo, or maybe she got it and just decided to use it as kindling for a bonfire of her political capital. Either way, people are not happy. Leading the charge against this madness is Lewis Cocking, the Conservative MP for Broxbourne, who's gathered a coalition of 26 MPs and a peer who've all signed an open letter to the Chancellor. And they've got the backing of 152,000 people who've signed a petition demanding that fuel duty stays frozen. That's not an insignificant number of people. That's a stadium full of angry motorists all shouting in unison, "Don't you dare!" Lewis Cocking told The Express that he wants to ensure the voices of millions of ordinary people across the country are heard. He went on to say that Keir Starmer and his failing Labour government, his words, not mine, need to step outside their metropolitan bubble and recognize that countless hardworking Brits depend on their cars, vans, and lorries every single day. They simply cannot afford yet another tax hike. And you know what? He's got a point. If you live in London, you've got the tube, buses, trains, Boris bikes, the whole shebang. But if you live in rural Lincolnshire or Cornwall or the Scottish Highlands, your car isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Without it, you can't get to work, you can't get your kids to school, you can't do your weekly shop. And hitting those people with more taxes isn't progressive policy, it's just cruel. Cocking said he'd deliver Fair Fuel UK's petition to number 10 and 11 Downing Street, and he made the argument that any rise in fuel duty would hit the poorest the hardest, particularly those living outside big cities, and it would harm the chances for economic growth. That last bit is key because Labour's supposed to be all about growth, right? Rachel Reeves bangs about it constantly, but how exactly are you supposed to grow the economy when you're taxing working people into oblivion and leaving them with less money to spend? Fair Fuel UK, the campaign group behind all this, argues that road transport taxes are regressive and significantly impact the UK's GDP, inflation, job creation, business investment, low-income families, and society's freedom of movement. That's a pretty comprehensive list of ways that fuel duty hikes screw things up. And they make the perfectly reasonable point that more money in people's pockets isn't just fairer, it's money they can spend in local businesses, which strengthens the wider economy. Ignoring this reality, according to Fair Fuel UK, is a form of collective fiscal amnesia. That's a fancy way of saying the government's forgotten basic economics. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Fair Fuel UK held a pre-budget parliamentary reception and invited all Labour MPs. They got constituents to personally invite their local Labour MPs, about 30 invitations per MP on average. The goal was to convince them that reducing fuel duty, or at least maintaining its current level, was both an economic and social good. Sounds reasonable, right? Guess how many Labour MPs showed up? Go on, take a guess. One. One solitary Labour MP bothered to turn up, and even that one MP refused to say whether they supported an increase, freeze, or cut in fuel duty. That tells you everything you need to know about how Labour's approaching this. They don't want to engage with the people who'll be affected. They don't want to hear the arguments. They've already made up their minds, and they're just hoping the backlash won't be too bad. Fairfuel UK also ran a survey of over 16,000 people, and the results are absolutely damning for anyone thinking about hiking fuel duty. 11% said they wanted to scrap it altogether. More than half, 54.7%, wanted it to be cut. 23% wanted it frozen where it is, and just 6.7% said they'd be happy with an increase. So even among Labour supporters, there's virtually no appetite for this. The people have spoken, and they've said in no uncertain terms, do not touch fuel duty. Fairfuel UK asked the obvious question, how can Rachel Reeves ignore the wants and opinions of the people who gave her political power? It's a fair point. Labour won a landslide just over a year ago. Those voters gave them a mandate to govern. But part of governing is actually listening to what people want and need. And what people are very clearly saying is that they can't afford another tax hike, especially one that hits them every time they fill up their tank or drive to work. Now, Fairfuel UK does veer into slightly conspiratorial territory when they suggest that this is all part of a plan to stop people driving and imprison them in unelected globalists' 15-minute cities as part of Labour's bankrupting journey to a pointless net zero. That's laying it on a bit thick, and I'm not sure Rachel Reeves is sitting in the Treasury cackling about imprisoning people in 15-minute cities, but the underlying frustration is real. People feel like they're being punished for driving when, for many of them, driving isn't a choice, it's the only way they can live their lives. Howard Cox, the founder of Fairfuel UK, made a really strong economic argument. He said keeping fuel duty frozen would be one of the best fiscal stimuli for this unpopular government's chances of restoring faith in its leadership. In contrast, hiking it could be the final political blow in Labour's succession of self-inflicted disasters. And he's not wrong. Labour's had a rocky start, to say the least. Winter fuel cuts, grooming gang scandals, benefit cuts, manifesto promises looking shaky. The last thing they need is to alienate millions of motorists right before local elections. Cocking also pointed out that fuel duty has been frozen for the past 15 years, and it's currently 6 pence below where it was when Labour was last in power. That freeze has been hugely beneficial to Britain's motorists and has actually strengthened the Treasury's finances by reducing inflationary pressure. That last bit is crucial. When fuel prices go up, everything goes up. Transport costs feed into the price of literally every product that needs to be moved from one place to another, which is basically all of them. So hiking fuel duty doesn't just hurt motorists, it fuels inflation across the entire economy. The Center for Economic and Business Research did some modeling for Fairfuel UK, and their findings should give Rachel Reeves serious pause. They predicted that raising fuel duty would bring only short-term, minimal benefits to the Treasury. But here's the kicker. They strongly suggested that raising fuel duty would result in a decline of more than 60% in tax revenue to the Treasury within 5 years. So not only would it be politically toxic and economically damaging, it wouldn't even raise the money the government thinks it will. It's a lose-lose-lose situation. So why on earth would Rachel Reeves even consider this? Well, the cynical answer is that she's desperate. The government needs money, the public finances are in a mess, and fuel duty is an easy target because it's already there. You don't have to create a new tax, you just have to tweak an existing one. But the problem is that just because something's easy doesn't mean it's smart, and hiking fuel duty is profoundly not smart, both politically and economically. There's also the electric vehicle tax angle, which is equally baffling. The government's been encouraging people to go electric for years. They've offered grants, subsidies, all sorts of incentives to get people to make the switch, and now just as more people are finally buying EVs, they're slapping a tax on them. It's like spending years telling someone to eat more vegetables and then charging them extra at the checkout when they actually do it. It completely undermines the policy you've been pushing. The timing of all this is particularly brutal because it's coming right before local elections in May, which are already expected to be a disaster for Labour. If Rachel Reeves goes ahead with this fuel duty hike, she's handing the Conservatives and Reform UK an absolute gift. They'll be campaigning on Labour's war on motorists, Labour's attack on working people, Labour breaking their promises. And in areas where people depend on their cars, that message will resonate. There's also a broader point here about who gets hurt by these policies. If you're wealthy and live in central London, a fuel duty hike barely touches you. You probably don't even own a car. But if you're a single mom in rural Wales, driving an old banger to your minimum wage job, every penny counts. That temporary 5 pence cut might be the difference between being able to get to work or not. And when Labour, a party that's supposed to represent working people, is the one taking that away, it's a betrayal of everything they claim to stand for. The revolt that's brewing over this isn't just about fuel duty. It's about a government that feels out of touch, that doesn't listen, that's more interested in balancing the books than understanding the real-world impact of its decisions. 152,000 people didn't sign that petition for fun. They signed it because they're worried, they're angry, and they feel like nobody in Westminster is listening to them. And when you've got 26 MPs and a peer backing them up, that's not a fringe movement. That's a serious political problem for Rachel Reeves.